Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining me for this best and worst of Alfred Hitchcock Presents Season 2. Yes, I have watched all 39 episodes. Yes, really, 39 episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents Season 2, and decided to try and go through for all of you what I thought were the 5 best episodes. And a nice way to say it, the 5 I think that are not essential to the series in any way. So I have to say, coming up with the 5 best episodes was actually pretty easy for me. I went back and looked at all my ratings, thought about the episodes, and there were really 5 that stood out above all the rest for me. As far as what I considered the weakest episodes, this was much more difficult. There were a lot of episodes that weren't really terrible, they were just kind of there. There were a lot of episodes like that. There were only 2 episodes I really strongly disliked, and I would advise skipping. The other 3 episodes I put on the worst list are there mostly because one element of them didn't work, and in most cases, actually, I think in all cases, the ending had a lot to do with that. So, with all that being said, let me start with number 5 on my worst list, which is John Brown's body. This was an episode where a wife tried to drive her husband crazy. Basically, this episode's just kind of there. There's no real suspense to this story. It kind of just plods along. The acting is okay, but some of the characters are a bit inconsistent. But what really puts this episode on this list is that the ending is really silly. Sometimes on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, you have to suspend your disbelief, but this ending really just came out of nowhere and was just kind of bizarre. I'll leave it at that. So coming in at number 4 on my list, Vicious Circle. This is one of those episodes where a hitman does some work and then gets himself into all kinds of trouble. This episode was a little bit contrived. The plot was kind of all over the place. It was also pretty predictable. You could see the ending coming a mile away. Also, I thought parts of this episode were over dramatic. Like I said in my review, I'm not really sure if the actor or the directors or the writers are to blame, but parts of it just came across as very forced, and the character motivations were a bit strange as this one as well. Like I said, not the greatest ending either. So at number 3 on my list, Toby. This is an episode about a woman, very well played by Jessica Tandy, who tries to reconnect with an old sweetheart. But of course, there's a twist as we're unsure about her motives, or her behavior. Like I said, this episode is well acted, and that's probably the thing that saves it from being terrible, honestly. The plot never really takes off, kind of never really goes anywhere. There's parts of it that are really unbelievable, and although the episode tries to be different, it just never really worked for me. And the ending is kind of strange. It feels a bit off, and it's definitely not great. Kind of a recurring theme with these episodes on the worst list. So now we get to the 2 episodes that I really did not like at all. Coming in at number 2 on my list is A Man Greatly Beloved. This is an episode about a child who tries to connect with an older gentleman who, of course, being Alfred Hitchcock Presents, has a secret. I had a few big issues with this episode. Number 1, like I said in my review, I have nothing against children, but the lead child character in this episode was just annoying beyond belief, in my opinion. She's very nosy, and nobody ever really calls her out on anything, which I thought was silly. She basically just roams around freely and does what she wants. There's also supposed to be a profound twist near the end of this episode, but it doesn't really work because the episode spends a lot of time on the child and not enough on the adult character who's involved with the twist. And not much really happens throughout most of this episode. I figured that out as I was watching. And like I said, the ending just didn't really do much for me either because of the presentation of the episode. This was definitely a tough episode to get through, and I did not enjoy this one at all. But certainly my least favorite episode of season 2 was My Brother Richard. If you like this episode, that's great. I'm glad you enjoyed it, but I did not like this episode at all. The basic plot of this one is a brother does something, commits a crime for another brother, and this leads to a lot of bad stereotypes of characters and unbelievable character motivations. The female lead is completely wasted. She does nothing but carry on and on about nothing throughout the episode. Nothing was believable. The whole episode tries really hard to be very dramatic and maybe even make a statement, and none of it worked for me at all. There's also some scenes near the end that are completely unbelievable. And, the climax isn't done very well at all, in my opinion. The execution of it doesn't really work. It's hard to even tell what's going on at times. And the ending isn't that great either. Basically, I thought My Brother Richard was a very poor episode in what is usually a great show. So now that I've talked about all the episodes I didn't care for, I am definitely very happy to talk about episodes that I liked quite a bit. So, starting off with number 5 of the best episodes, The Manacled. This one, like a lot of Alfred Hitchcock Presents episodes, had a very simple premise. Basically, an officer is escorting a prisoner to a new location to make sure he doesn't escape. But like a lot of the best simple premises, this one is executed very well. The acting is very good. The episode is deliberate, but it never feels slow. It is allowed to build suspense as it goes. There's a lot of interesting twists and turns between both characters. There's definitely a lot of psychology in this episode. And although the ending wouldn't be considered a great twist, it is very fitting and feels very satisfying and works perfectly in the context of the episode. The best thing I could say about The Manacled is that it's just very, very solid all the way around, and that's why it comes in at number 5. So, coming in next at number 4 on my list is The Dangerous People. This was the very last episode of the season, episode 39. I said the season ended on a strong note, and I stand by that. This is another one with a pretty simple plot that really works, where two men suspect each other of being someone who escaped from a mental hospital. Both characters get time to shine in this episode. We get to learn the inner thoughts of both characters. It's very well acted and a fine character piece. It's also very intense. I really felt like I was almost in parts of this episode, which is always a good thing. The ending was not what I expected, and it would not have been my particular pick for the best acting, but it is satisfactory and does work in the context of the episode. Overall, The Dangerous People is excellent. Coming in at a very strong number 3, Malice Domestic. This was a very fast, entertaining episode about a couple, a husband and a wife, and some unfortunate things are happening to the husband, and we're not really sure if the wife's behind it or not. This episode takes a lot of great twists and turns. There's a lot that happens in this episode in 25 minutes. And the characters, although all very interesting, always seem believable. Their motivations work in the context of the twists of the episode. There's actually a couple of twists in this episode, and hints are given throughout, but they don't give the episode away, but yet they make perfect sense. And the ending is definitely very memorable, one of the more memorable endings of season 2. Overall, Malice Domestic is a very entertaining episode, and definitely one of the most entertaining season 2 episodes. Plus, Ralph Meeker gives a great performance in it, and it has Phyllis Thaxter, who's pretty much great in everything, in my opinion. Coming in at number 2 on my list is Crack of Doom. This was an episode that was pretty early on in the season, but the more I've thought about it, the more I've liked it. I was very favorable in my review towards this episode, but I might have even slightly undersold it. This is a great character study about a man who likes to play poker and how it definitely changes his life. It's a very suspenseful and intense episode, especially considering there's no real murder or anything that drastic involved. The episode still manages to build up a lot of tension. I was really invested in the main character, and I never knew that just watching people play poker could be that interesting or intense. Overall, this is just a very well done episode, and I really have nothing but good things to say about Crack of Doom, and that's why it comes in at number 2. Definitely one to check out. So, coming in at a very strong number 1, the episode that I thought was easily the best of season 2 was One More Mile to Go. This episode is basically about a man who has a plan to do in his wife and all the after effects of that. This isn't really a spoiler because this pretty much is made known the intent of the episode right from the beginning. Alfred Hitchcock directs this episode and once again proves why he is the master of the suspense, as I've said many times before. There's a lot of tension. This is another episode that I felt like I was almost involved in what was going on. The main character is very interesting, and even though this episode has a few moments that feel like they really shouldn't work from a plot standpoint, somehow Hitchcock pulls them off because he really shows he knows what he's doing as a director. But the thing I like the most about this episode is that it's a great example of visual storytelling. There's not a ton of dialogue in this episode. There's long stretches where we just witness everything that's going on. I always appreciate it when a television show can do this kind of storytelling, in this manner. It's always a unique experience. So overall, One More Mile to Go also has a pretty memorable ending, and I just thought the episode really worked as a whole as the best of season 2. So that'll do it for my Alfred Hitchcock Presents Best and Worst of Season 2. If you'd like, you can leave me a comment down below telling me which episode you liked, which episode you didn't like, if you agree with me, disagree with me, all that stuff. There will be a lot more content coming to the channel very soon, and I would like to thank everyone very much for watching.